my video on for a second so you can see me, and then I will sort of turn it on and off as we go here. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to share more with you about our work at InScribe, but more importantly, the work that we are doing with Indiana University. So again, if you have questions throughout, please go ahead and put them in the chat area and we will make sure that we address them. And kind of the format for today, I think most of you on the call have talked to us at some point about InScribe, but I'm going to have Anna do just a quick overview of InScribe as a platform, really quickly and high level, just to make sure we're all on the same page about the technology. And then we're really excited today to have Matt Gunkel from Indiana University. Matt is the Director of Teaching and Learning Technologies there, and someone we've been working really closely with on our rollout of InScribe across a number of use cases at IU. So we're super excited to have him join us today, and he's going to talk a little bit about some of the pain points and goals that IU had in bringing InScribe into their organization for a variety of use cases that we'll discuss. And then I'm going to kind of walk us through the implementation, how it worked, and some of the lessons that we learned for the two areas that IU has been focused on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anna to just give us a quick overview of InScribe and lead us into the rest of the discussion.
All right, hi everybody. As Katie said, I think most everybody has some sense of InScribe, but just to sort of review, InScribe is an intelligent Q&A platform that combines the power of community and artificial intelligence to bring learners together with the resources, answers, and people that they need to be successful. So as you know, if you want to, yeah, there you go. Students rely on experts throughout their entire learning journey. So that can be connecting with coaches and advisors during the onboarding process, classroom support resources, and even alumni and career services folks as they're getting ready to graduate. The problem is today's model is pretty inefficient. So it's a lot of one-on-one interaction. So that can be somebody emailing their professor, stopping by office hours, maybe making a phone call. And instructors are answering the same questions over and over again, and it's really not the best use of their time. So what InScribe is doing is increasing the availability and efficiency of your existing support resources. And the way that we do that is by creating communities of students and experts within your institution. So now, instead of asking a question via email or maybe in a one-on-one interaction, students can search the InScribe repository or ask a question directly to the community. That way, peers and experts can answer those questions, and the responses are tagged and stored in a searchable repository so that other students across the institution can benefit from those conversations. And then over time, we're creating a knowledge repository that can be shared across your institution and create sort of an institution-specific view of any sort of topic or program that a school may be offering. InScribe is also supported by a layer of artificial intelligence. So right now, that means keyword identification and sentiment analysis. So we're looking at all the posts and alerting moderators if somebody might need some additional intervention. Maybe they're at risk, they're frustrated, they are confused, and need some extra support. We're also developing some natural language processing that will help identify trending topics that are coming up in student posts. And then the next step will be to create some proprietary AI that will help identify particular resources that might help me. So for example, Anna reacts really well to videos that contain animation or music, so I can better serve up answers that will assist me.
Great, thanks Anna. And just to kind of round that out, so we sort of mentioned at the beginning that the idea of an expert really kind of carries with the student throughout their journey at an institution. And so we really work across that entire life cycle. So some of the really common use cases for institutions leveraging InScribe are around, for example, onboarding of new students, helping students connect with advisors or coaches to help smooth that process. So that's things like financial aid and registration and belonging. Then there's also more of that academic and curriculum use case. So really using InScribe around the course itself, whether I'm learning math or psychology, or I'm in a nursing program, you know, having that academic context. And then not something that we really sort of emphasized in the introduction, but it is one of the ways in which Indiana University is using InScribe, and we're starting to see it really picking up momentum at other institutions, and that's around faculty development. So rather than have students be members of the community, it's really the faculty talking to one another and sharing stories and best practices to help them build a sense of community and connection. So for today's presentation, we're really going to focus on this first and this last use case, talking about leveraging InScribe for onboarding and also how it can be used for faculty development. If you have interest in more of a curriculum or academic use case, definitely let me know, and we can follow up with some other examples of where we're doing that with other institutions. So at this point, I'm going to introduce Matt. Matt, if you want to come on camera for a minute.
Hi, how is everyone?
Hi, Matt. So thank you again so much for being here with us today. And I thought I would turn it over to you for a few minutes to just talk a little bit generally about IU and how our partnership got started, and then introduce for us that student use case.
Yeah, so thanks, Katie. So this has really been an interesting journey for Indiana University. So as many of you, I'm sure, attend EDUCAUSE and really sort of travel different conferences looking for new and innovative things that people might be doing. It's actually where I first met Katie and Crafted as a company. And at the time, we were looking for ways in which to join or work with sort of disparate users that we had across our institution. So IU is comprised of, and we'll show this a little later too, but IU is comprised of roughly 8 different institutions across the entire state. So we have 2 core campuses, and then we have several regional campuses that operate around the state. And as part of several different initiatives, we're constantly asking all of those different faculty and staff and students to potentially to work together in very meaningful ways and or to create cohesive experiences across those different campuses. And so we were looking for solutions that would allow us to basically create those conjoined communities in a very meaningful way. And then how would we actually actively curate and manage and work with those individuals on a day-to-day basis? How would we pull together our teaching centers? How would we pull in what we were doing with central IT? And how would we best be able to sort of manage those scenarios? And InScribe actually sort of showed us a way in which we might do that. And so that was very exciting for us. And so that's what originally sort of kicked off us working with Crafted and starting to use the InScribe product, and actually beginning to think about all the different ways in which we might be able to leverage this for creating these cohesive communities across our organization. And so with that, we can actually start with sort of the first use case that we have here, which is onboarding online students. So the regional campuses were actually charged by the state to create collaborative degree programs across the regionals. And so they all have to work together to basically create different courses that are offered on a rotating basis at different home campuses, and then different users can enroll in those courses seamlessly from their home campus. And as you might imagine, like on the back end, this sounds very technical, but from the end user's perspective, they attend a campus, they have one home campus, they can enroll in any of the online courses, and then that course gets rotated on a semester by semester basis and allows them to attend those courses in a very seamless fashion. And so this meant then that for us in creating those resources to onboard those students into these online experiences and into these online programs, we had to really come up with a way to manage what that experience would look like. And this is where we leverage what we have, our success coaches. So our success coaches are actually managed out of a singular campus. So they're out of our IU East campus in Richmond, Indiana. And they actually work collectively to do all of the onboarding and the management for these students. So they actually run the space, they run the InScribe deployment for each and every single one of these students in collectively working through the online and onboarding material. And so what that really means is that they're in there answering questions They're actually working with those students on getting them scheduled. They're helping them work through their programs. So it's similar to advising, but it's a little more hands-on, and it's really designed to provide the sort of final connection or final touch point for those students because they can't walk onto a physical campus or a physical location. So these individuals are responsible for really getting to know who they are and what that looks like. You can go on, Katie. So again, so what does this really look like? So this sort of first year experience and this orientation, all of this material and content is designed to do exactly what an in-person orientation would do. But it's also designed to basically be a brand building exercise and to get these students engaged and actively talking and understanding maybe what other online students have asked in the past. And this is really where the InScribe platform starts to shine. So it really allows these users to get in and directly ask questions in the material and content really across all of these different campuses. So we're pulling in all of these different populations from their home campus. They're enrolled in a singular Canvas course. And directly from within that Canvas course, they're able to engage sort of in this community of all of these online students who are going through orientation. And they can get curated answers from the different success coaches. They can actually engage in conversation with one another. They can see answers to important material or shifts in administrative systems or things that we may be doing through questions that have maybe been answered in previous semesters and so on. So it really provides this really cohesive and tight experience for those students and allows them to continue to work through all of this different material. It also allows us a singular place where we can now update the orientation, we can control the experience, we can understand how they're working through these different areas. Okay, I'm going to pause there. So that's sort of how we're using this with online orientation. We also have replicated the same orientation material for face-to-face, and so some of those students are also then able to join into this experience, right? So again, same community, same people who may be engaging with financial aid and the bursar and the registrar and asking similar questions again. And that's where, again, we have collections of this content that we can then reuse and repurpose again with different populations. Those populations can engage across one another and basically continue the conversation. This, of course, helps us reduce the administrative burden, but it also helps people feel really connected to IU. They know where to go. They know who these people are. They can really sort of have these compelling stories around understanding how to engage the administrative system and or the complexity that is Indiana University. All right, Katie, next slide.
So I'm going to... Oops.
You're going to jump, yeah.
Yep. So that's a great introduction, and I think some of the really key points that Matt made that have been reinforced for us with our work with IU Online is, one, the idea that orientation is not a point in time. Like it's not something you do the first week and then it disappears. So having consistent access to the material and the community, not just in that first week, but over your entire online program, was something that was really important to them. And then the other is the idea that online and on-ground students can be in this community together, sharing the same information. So really thinking about expanding, starting with online students, starting to build that repository of knowledge, but then welcoming other participants in, like Anna described earlier, so that you're leveraging this great material that you've generated together and having an impact on a larger and larger population. So I'll just show you kind of tactically what this looks like. So Matt mentioned that they took the content that they were already using or thinking about for orientation and moved it into a Canvas course instance. And they took that content and broke it down pretty granularly into these high-level topic areas that they knew were really top of mind for students, or things that they really wanted to make sure students paid attention to. So within 2 weeks of being admitted to IU, students are invited to participate in this course. And again, they retain their access throughout the time that they're in the online program. Now, that material that we just saw is sort of the core, almost curriculum of the onboarding process. That's all of the learning material that the coaches have put together. That is then supported by the IU Online community that is powered by InScribe. So that community is available right in the left-hand navigation. It launches directly within the Canvas course. And again, it's a place for the students to ask follow-up questions, share their own experiences, or just continue the conversation about what they're learning in the course itself. So we can see a really easy way to ask and share, the ability to view the highlights of what's happening in the community and some of the activity from the coaches and their peers. So this is just a sort of a high-level link to accessing the online community. If the student just wants to jump in and see what's happening across the whole space, they can do so here. But we also worked with IU to create more targeted access points. So for example, there's a section in the course about finances. There's one about academic planning and registration. And within each of these modules, we have created an access point for the community that is essentially pre-filtered down to the topics and conversations that are specific to that area. So when I'm in the finances section, this little view that we see here is actually an embedded view of what's happening in InScribe, and I'm only seeing the content that is relevant to that topic area. So it's really about helping the students get to the materials that are most likely to be relevant and interesting to them as quickly as possible. And just to kind of give you a sense of how this got started from the InScribe side, so once the system is integrated, we've kind of figured out what the topics were. The coaches preceded the InScribe community with some of the common FAQs that they know students always had. So in some cases, they wrote little articles. In some cases, they sourced videos or created videos and pre-populated a little bit of the content just to kind of get the community started. But then the remainder of the content that gets added to the community is really done in reaction to what the students are asking for. So when the student posts a question, that then prompts the coach to provide an answer or potentially to add a new article or video to help support that answer over time. And I love this example because it's a great example of really the full kind of opportunity for support that the community provides. So here we have a student who has a question about graduation. You know, you're an online student, kind of figuring out what that graduation process looks like is a little different. And the first person that jumped in to respond was one of their peers. So another online student who had had this similar question and had a suggestion for the student about how to think about it. So really learning from my own peers and providing that support. And then we can see right after that, the coach jumped in, reiterated and supported the answer that the student provided, and then actually created an additional resource, how to prepare for commencement, that they then recommended to the student to use. So it's just a great example of not only students leveraging this to ask questions that are unique to them, but peer support, peers jumping in to help one another, and also the coaches using the questions that are coming in to inform what kind of content they want to create and share as part of the repository over time. Now, we definitely learned some things from this initial implementation with the online students. It's been live just since the fall semester. So going into the spring, there's a couple of modifications and changes that we're thinking about making. One is really increasing the student voice in the community. So the content that we preceded the community was very coach driven, a bit practical, so valuable, but really things like financial aid and registration and things that coaches really wanted to make sure students knew. Going forward, we would also like to incorporate a little bit more of students' perspectives. So stories from students about their first year or what they would wish they would have known or things that they learned about learning online. So they have more of that peer-to-peer at the onset. We're also, it was really clear to us that outreach is really important. So just letting students know about the orientation course in the community when they're accepted is not enough. So we have been building out ongoing engagement plans where the coaches are sharing content, reminding students about the resources that are available to them to encourage re-engagement over time. And then the final one is, one of the things we're going to try out is applying some ownership over particular topics to the coaches. So there was a little bit of when questions would come in, the coach is not sure if they should jump on it or another coach should jump on it. So we're going to try having the coaches kind of specialize in certain topic areas. So if something comes in for registration, that coach knows immediately that's for them to jump on and make sure that it gets answered. So I'll pause there and see if we have any questions just about this first section on the student engagement. Veronica, are you seeing it? I can't tell if there's anything coming in.
Nope. Katie, there's a question here. So there's two questions actually. So since you're using Canvas for the course, why not use the Canvas discussions? And then also a question about how this impacts the course's workload, whether having the community
impacts the coach's workload.
Yep.
Great. So Matt, do you want to take either of those, or do you want me to take them?
Yeah, I can go. So on the Canvas discussions question, so what Canvas discussions really doesn't allow for is one, the curation of content right within the tool. The other thing that it really doesn't allow for is pulling in easily different populations to reuse the material again and again. So using InScribe rather than the discussions tool allows us to pull content forward semester over semester. It also allows us to pull in different groups who may be engaging in different orientation sections, right? So if we have one that's specifically for the IU Online and then you've got one that's face-to-face, they can all still be participating perhaps in the same space in InScribe and really actively working through the same material and content and or engaging back with the success coaches and advisors. So it really just helps bridge that gap and connect those individuals in a way that they otherwise would have never been connected, but also do so in a protected way.
Awesome. Yeah, and I didn't mention that, but we do have multiple entry points for this IU Online community. So I think today there's 6 or 7 onboarding courses, but they all point to the same shared InScribe community. And we're also working with them to add access points in their websites as well. So students may be going to the website looking for help, and so making sure that they can access the community from that location is really important. And that's really difficult or impossible to do with this sort of standard discussion board. Yeah. I think the other question was about coach workload. So what's interesting is the feedback that we get is that using InScribe actually decreases the workload for coaches, because these are questions that they're answering anyway, but normally they're answering it in an email or a phone call or somebody knocking on their door. And what they found is that the population of questions that students have is pretty consistent. So rather than answering that same question 7 times in 7 different emails, they're able to answer it once in the community, and then the other students can access it. Or they can just, if they get the same question again, they can direct the student to the response that's in the community. So it really actually helps them streamline their workload over time.
Okay,
any other questions?
Yeah, there's a couple more in here, Katie. So there was another question about how long it takes to moderate a community. That I'm not sure, you may have answered that one already.
The workload.
I'll
add one thing to that, because I think one of the important capabilities of InScribe is that it does alert and notify people about what's happening inside the system. So the moderators do not have to sit watching InScribe waiting for questions to come in. We will send them an email when a new question comes in. They can click right through that email to get to the question and provide the answer. So it really does provide some additional tools to facilitate, the moderator knowing when they need to spend time and where they need to pay that attention.
So that's also, I should also mention in looking at these questions that the moderators are their own collective group of people who may have differing roles within the institution, who are able to selectively answer questions that pertain to their area. So we mentioned the success coaches, but InScribe also allows us to pull in financial aid or the bursar, and they can actually have an active role in answering questions as well. So basically, if there's a question that would directly pertain, they could jump in and or be asked, sort of by the manager of the group to get in and answer the InScribe question as well. Again, reducing the workload, but also just helping to sort of, again, bridge that gap into the institution or in working across the institution with those various offices.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, great. And then here's a question about quality control of the responses. How are the questions and experts' answers being updated and managed?
Great question. So there's a couple of ways to do that. So first of all, anything in the system can be edited or deleted by what we call a moderator. So in the case of this community, it's the IU coaches. So it's really easy to go in and modify something or remove it if desired. I didn't mention it when we were looking at this screen, but we also, you see this tiny little green badge down here. If responses are coming in from the experts in the community, they are automatically tagged with this badge. So the students know that this is an expert response, sort of automatically certified. And then coming in the next month are a couple of features that are going to help with this. One is the ability to certify an answer. So if an expert, if another student has responded and the expert sees that that was a great response, they will be able to apply a certification similar to the badge that we see here to that answer, so students know this is high quality. And I think over time students will look for these quality notifications, quality badges, to help direct where they pay attention for responses. And then we're also adding kind of what we call a cleanup bot to the experience. So what the cleanup bot will do is monitor the community and proactively identify posts that might need to be cleared out. So maybe they're date dependent or nobody's looked at them for a long time, couple of other characteristics, but they will make those recommendations. So it's easier to stay on top of clearing out stuff from the community that might not be relevant anymore.
Okay, and then one more here. Does this conflict with help support sections within individual programmatic courses? Are these courses not showing the typical help and support sections?
Yeah, so we normally do recommend that if you're using InScribe, you would remove, and I think this is what you're getting at. A lot of times a course will just have a discussion board that's allocated to questions. So it's not necessarily academic. It's like if you have a question for your professor, ask it here. We generally recommend that you remove that and replace it with InScribe. And then what we can do on the InScribe side is we have a concept of channels, which are subgroups that can exist within the community. So even though participation is at the community level, that course could have its own channel or subgroup in InScribe. So there's still a space for the educator to have a conversation with their set of students, but still be part of the larger community at the same time.
Yeah, Katie, just to add to that, so in the example we showed, it's the onboarding course linking to the IU online community, but as Katie said, really any section of any course can link together into a common community. So if there's a program where you want the onboarding and also academic support to be together, you can put them in the same program community and just create those channels.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Veronica.
Yeah, of course.
Great. Well, I just want to thank everybody so much for joining us today. We will, and I especially want to thank Matt. So Matt Gunkel, so much for your time and all the work that you guys have been doing with us. It's been a real pleasure to be able to participate with you guys in some of the innovative work that you're doing. Again, this has been recorded, so we will send this recording out to everyone after the webinar today. And if you have any additional questions, you can always reach me at this email address. We'd be happy to follow up with any additional conversation or demo if anybody wants to go a little bit deeper or explore some of the use cases that you're thinking about at your own institution. So with that, I'll leave this up for a minute if anyone wants to grab my contact information. But with that, we will wrap it up. And thanks everybody for joining us today.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Matt.